Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome. Today is March 21st, and this is instance number 1 of your final Tech Speakers Lab, the administrative on. Thank you so much for joining. Congratulations for making it here, and congratulations, and yay, this is the last lab. Thank you everyone for tuning in to the new Tech Speakers onboarding session that we're having today. During this call, I hope to provide you with a little bit of information on how you can successfully navigate the ins and outs of this program, the Mozilla Tech Speakers. We will have some time for Q&A at the end of the presentation today. And of course, we encourage all of your questions. Please feel free to add these questions at any time during this lab. Just hop on over to the meeting doc that is linked in your calendar invite, and you can add them to the Q&A section at the bottom there. Also, while you're in the doc, please be sure to add your name to the roll call section. This is super important because it's the only way we'll be able to know who has completed this lab. So I'll just repeat that one more time. Take a look at your calendar invite, visit the meeting notes document, and be sure to add your name to the roll call section. It's super important because we want and need to know who has attended and completed this lab. If we knew exactly who was viewing automatically, that might be a little bit creepy, I think. Right, anyways, well, for anyone who isn't familiar or I haven't introduced myself to yet, I'd like to tell you a little bit about me. My name is Michael Ellis. I work on managing the Tech Speakers program here at Mozilla. I work alongside Jan Eves, who is another program manager with Tech Speakers. Also work alongside Flocky, who's one of our staff evangelists, and Jessica Rose, who's recently joined our team. Some of you may have met Jessica, who is the director of our program. You can find my contact information here on the slide. I, along with Jan Eves, Flocky, and Jessica, can also be reached at ts-staff@mozilla.com. So if you ever need to reach out to us and you're not sure who to ping, you can always use that as a great option. And if you need to reach me on Telegram, or you may have already seen me there, my handle is available, MozMike. So let's dive on into it. But before we do, let's take a quick moment now for a short, but I think well-earned word of congratulations. This group has been one of our most awesome and successful cohorts to date. I want to thank everyone tuning in today who took time from his and her schedules to view the master classes, and those who participated in and delivered all the quality work during the lab sessions. We really thank you for your participation. You've earned yourself the right to call yourselves tech speakers. I think that's something that's really awesome, and it's something that sets you apart. In the history of the program, since we began in 2015, fewer than 150 people have earned the designation of calling themselves a Mozilla Tech Speaker. So that, I think, is something to be very proud of. We are most delighted to welcome you, and we hope that you feel equally as excited to be joining us. So congratulations, and we're delighted to have you aboard. So you're becoming a Mozilla Tech Speaker, but what does that entail exactly? In general, the concept seems pretty simple after all. You tend to apply to an event or conference that you're interested in presenting at. And if you are accepted, you go to the event. And of course, you deliver your presentation. Seems simple enough, right? But once we start to dive into details, like applying to events, how to travel and work the logistics of arrangements out and speaking, various questions start to arise. Questions such as, can I host my own events? How many talks do I need to give in an average year? What exactly should I talk about? How far can I travel? And how exactly does this whole invoicing thing work? Hopefully, we'll be able to address these questions and more in the session today. As we're speaking, of course, if you have any questions that are not being addressed, feel free to add them to the meeting notes document, and we'll circle back to them as we take a pause at the end of the call. During today's call, we'll review aspects of the program that take place before your event, such as finding the right speaking opportunities that work best for you, how to apply to events, how to request travel funding from Mozilla, and how to share your activities with the group so that we know what you've been up to. We'll also discuss important information regarding attending events. We will review all about traveling to events. We'll talk about the importance of the code of conduct. We'll also discuss a couple of quick tips, such as things to bring, things to remember, and just general tips and tricks. And finally, we'll discuss post-event matters, things like submitting an event feedback form and getting invoices processed for reimbursement. Hopefully, in doing so, we can answer many of the common questions that new tech speakers have when they join the program. So first off, let's take a look at before your event. That's a really nice slide. I wish my desk was that clean. The first step, staying informed, is always a good thing, no? One of the first steps in giving any talk or presenting a workshop is deciding which conference or event you'd like to submit your proposal to. The task becomes a little bit easier with a curated list of suitable events that you can have at your disposal. This is because there can be a lot of noise in the conference and event industry. We try to make this process a little bit easier for tech speakers. To do this, we maintain a list of industry CFPs and a calendar so that tech speakers can take a look and view all the upcoming sponsored events and speaking opportunities that may be of interest to them in their region or area. Just to let you know, the name of that calendar is Calls for Papers and Participation. It's a great source of conferences, events, and meetups to apply to. The list is managed by tech speaker staff. You can view this calendar if you like at any time via the link that's available in the resources section, or if you like, you can add this calendar to your own calendar setup. And in order to do that, you just need to reach out to a Mozilla staff member, myself, Jan Eves, or even tech speaker Joanna will be able to help you out as well. And this is another thing that's interesting related to the CFP calendar. If you want to check out perhaps a more eye-pleasing view of the same data found in the CFP calendar, I suggest you check out this webpage right here. It is made by our very own tech speaker, very own fellow tech speaker, Flocky, who now works as a Mozilla contractor and staff member on the program. He whipped this up for us one day, and it's a really nice way to see at a glance what CFP deadlines are approaching. The URL is listed here on the slide, and it's also available in the notes document for this session. But your only option is not to apply to events that we list on the CFP calendar. Of course, if you would rather do more of your own thing, we encourage that too. You can find opportunities for speaking and presenting workshops through the Mozilla Reps events portal. If you do happen to find an event that stands out to you, feel free to reach out to the organizer of that event directly and let he or she know that you are a Mozilla tech speaker who's interested in participating and speaking at the event. Or also, you're free to conduct your own research on conferences, meetups, or events and trailblaze your own path. It's entirely up to you. Applying to the event continued. Once you find an event that interests you and would like to present at, then it's time to apply, obviously. Most of you have already watched the Technically Speaking CFP workshop, available as one of our masterclasses. If not, I recommend it as a great resource. It's available on the Tech Speakers Air Mozilla channel if you'd like to check that out and you haven't already. When it comes to applying to present, some tech speakers prefer to cast a wide net and apply to many different conferences, while other tech speakers prefer to find events that really interest them and laser focus on those. Your specific method will depend on what feels right for you. For the most part, tech speakers find their own speaking opportunities. There are numerous occasions where opportunities come to us as Mozilla staff members, and we raise those up to the tech speakers group to see if anyone is interested. But for the majority, we allow our tech speakers to select, choose, research, and apply to their own events. Makes sense? Either way, whichever method you decide to use, I recommend setting some time aside when you do apply to carefully think through your application. I recommend visiting the event site to learn more about their specific CFP process and a little bit more about the event itself. This allows you to submit a thoughtful application, I think, that's a little bit more specific to the event and the topic that you're trying to apply for. It's a lot like job applications. To use the analogy, a customized cover letter sent in with a job application is far more likely to get an interview than one without. Similarly, your talk proposal is far more likely to get accepted if it's been tailored to the event that you're applying to. An example of this would be if you'd like to maybe speak about mixed reality or virtual reality, and you're applying to an event that seems to have a topic focus on speech recognition, you might put a little bit of a twist on your VR talk and speak about how voice commands can be used to navigate browsers in VR. It allows you to stay in your comfort zone of the topic you like while still making your proposal specific to the event and very appealing to the people who are selecting those as well. Another thing to consider is the time from when you submit your proposal to when you actually get your invitation letter from an event or conference. It can vary by weeks or months depending on the event and who's organizing it. So for that reason, I always recommend that you keep an eye on your email inbox so you don't want to miss those opportunities if you do get a reply or an invitation to an event. Great. If you have been accepted to present or talk and you need funding assistance for hotel, travel, and other incidental expenses, then Mozilla may be able to help. As a tech speaker, you may request travel funding for an upcoming talk or workshop you've been accepted to. All you need to do is fill out the sponsorship request form and await your reply. One thing to keep in mind is that tech speakers as a program, we currently have a focus on funding travel for tech speakers who are presenting talks and workshops. And by comparison, we have less of a focus on funding things like travel to attend a conference, travel to staff a conference or a booth. Funding for providing swag for an event is not something that we commonly do. We do provide some stickers occasionally, but if you think that you may go give a talk and then hand out 100 t-shirts at the end, I might want to adjust that expectation a little bit for you now. That's not very common here in the program. Also, another thing is event hosting. We tend not to spend a lot of our budget on event hosting. That is because it is quite an expensive endeavor to host events. And if we were to scale that up, it would eat through our budget at a prodigious rate, and it would be unsustainable for us. And that's the reason behind that. So for those reasons, we tend to focus on speaking engagements, workshop engagements, Q&A sessions, and panels. Our panel sessions are another thing that we typically approve on a regular basis. So what happens after you submit your request for funding? Well, what's going to happen is behind the scenes, a team of Mozilla staff will process and review the requests before we make a group decision. We do this during a weekly meeting. Currently, that meeting is taking place every Tuesday. The average turnaround time is 5 to 10 business days. After that, you'll receive an email reply that contains a team's decision on funding. The subject line is provided here in the slide in case you want to keep an eye out for that. It'll say sponsorship request, your name, and then continue and say add event title. If you are approved and you do have an invoice after the event, you can reply directly to this email when submitting your invoice, and it makes things a lot easier on everyone's end. And additionally, once we make that team decision on your request, we try to notify you via Telegram so that you're aware and you can keep an eye out for that email. Regarding event sponsorship requests, we typically ask for at least 4 weeks advance notice from the time that the event starts in order to review, process, and review and process the request and book the necessary travel arrangements. This 4 weeks lead time is especially important for new tech speakers who are submitting their first funding request because there's additional small hurdles to jump over. For your first time traveling with Mozilla tech speakers, we may need to set up a travel account that allows you to book your airfare. So the 4 weeks advance notice is especially important for new tech speakers. And now let's speak for a minute about how to share your activity and let other tech speakers and Mozilla staff know what you're up to. Before you go off and deliver your presentation, essentially we want you to let us know about it. And we do that by asking that you add it to the Tech Speakers activity calendar. And if you can, also let us know in Telegram. Adding your speaking and workshop activities to the calendar is super important. Let me repeat that. Adding your speaking and workshop activities to the calendar is super important. It not only helps us to promote you and support you while you travel, but also helps us to measure the impact of the program over the course of the year. That's super important for not only supporting you in your logistics and as you venture and travel the globe, but in allowing the program to prove its value to Mozilla and continue on for additional years, get additional funding so we can continue to scale and grow. So I'd like to just emphasize the importance of letting us know what you're up to. And it's just as simple as adding an event to a calendar. So let's look at a sample together to review how this is done. Letting us know about your engagement is as easy as creating, as I was saying, just a simple calendar entry. We have a standard format that we typically use. So if you look at arrow 1 in the title, the format should be your name, activity. Activity is typically speaking or giving workshop or hosting workshop. And then topic at event name. So an example here is Michael speaking about PWAs at Super Web Conference. Arrow number 2, and your view may change. This is, of course, the Google Calendar. It is classic view. Your view might be slightly different, but the same theories apply. Be sure to click an all-day event. What this does is it funnels everyone's activities up to the top of our calendar. So when we're viewing the Tech Speakers activity calendar, we are not required to scroll throughout the entire day. Everything is floated up to the top of the calendar, and at a glance, we can easily see where the tech speakers are, how their flights are going. It just helps everything to stay smooth and running nicely. Arrow number 3 is adding the location. We do have a preferred format for this. It's city, country. Some people get very specific, and they include the university, the address, the zip code, the room number. This information is not necessary. Simple city and country will be more than adequate here. Number 4 is one of the most common mistakes that tech speakers make. When they go to add something to the tech speakers activity calendar, because calendars default to personal calendar, what they do is they create an entry in the personal calendar instead of the Moz Tech Speakers activities calendar. This can impact our view of how many activities you've had. So if you've added 5 activities to your personal calendar and 2 activities to the Tech Speakers activity calendar, then from our viewpoint, we think that you've only had 2 activities. This could potentially inhibit you from receiving end-of-the-year support, hardware. It could also potentially inhibit you from receiving an invitation to our meetups and training activities, because sometimes those are based on activity levels. So point number 4 seems really simple, select the right calendar, but it's super important and a super common mistake. And finally, of course, hit save. Now let's talk for, oops, excuse me. Now let's talk about during the event, things to consider and keep in mind for just a moment. When tech speakers need to travel, they almost always use Agencia to book reservations for airfare and accommodation, as I mentioned earlier. Agencia is a platform. It works just like Expedia or a similar travel website. In fact, it's actually owned by Expedia. It's just Expedia rebranded for business. So if your talk has been approved for travel funding, you can book an Agencia, and then TechSpeaker staff will approve the booking, and Mozilla will pay the cost directly. That'll be paid directly by Mozilla's central billing, and you'll never have to put it on your credit card or worry about that or submitting an invoice. It's all handled automatically. All Mozilla-sponsored travel must be approved via the TechSpeakers funding request form. So anytime you want to book travel and have Mozilla pay for it, it requires a funding request. Super simple. A link to that funding request form is available in the notes document as well, if you want to check that out and take a look. Agencia accounts are not typically created until you have a need for travel. So once you have your first approved travel request, You can reach out to myself for assistance with creating your Mozilla Agency account. If I'm not available, you can also reach out to Jan Eves, and he would be more than happy to help you as well. One thing to keep in mind, we do encourage new tech speakers to gain experience giving talks in your own community, country, region, before we approve trips of greater distances. The idea here started with the concept of a brand new speaker coming out, kind of new to the industry, new to speaking. Their very first trip may not be halfway around the globe to, say, Australia to give a talk in Sydney. Instead, we would encourage them to stay kind of a little bit closer to their hometown and get their feet wet, practice giving their talk, get comfortable with the community. If you're an established speaker that has given numerous talks, these rules might apply slightly looser to you. We always try to consider multiple factors anytime we review funding requests. So this is a general rule of thumb, but maybe not a hard, fast rule that applies to absolutely everybody, because it varies on skills and experience. Another important thing to consider is Mozilla community participation guidelines, excuse me. Tech speakers are expected to adhere to the exact same set of community participation guidelines that all Mozillians, including staff members, follow. Although I won't be reviewing these in detail with you during today's call, the link to the Mozilla CPG is available in the notes document. It's available right now. And all tech speakers will be required to indicate that they have reviewed the CPG when we email you your registration form. And I'll speak a little bit more about that here in a moment. Essentially, you're ready to be these guidelines, but essentially they state that you should conduct yourself like respectable, inclusive, professional, and decent human beings. They also state that we should never engage in toxic, derogatory, or destructive behavior when representing Mozilla. It seems obvious, but it's very important. Our program, Tech Speakers, has had the benefit of not having major incidents or blemishes on our record. And we don't want you to be the first major incident of bad behavior at a conference or event that results in being ejected from the program, being banned from Mozilla, being temporarily suspended, or worse consequences depending on the severity. Yeah, so be good people and should not apply. We do this basically to help ensure that our community operates in safe environments, of course. There are a few best practices listed on the side, on the side of the slide here. They're intended to help you stay safe and represent Mozilla well when you're traveling for the program. Before traveling, you should, of course, not only familiarize yourself with the Mozilla CPG, but also the specific code of conduct for the event that you're attending. Code of conducts can sometimes vary from event to event, and it's always great to take a look and see if there are any details to the event that you'll be at that you would have otherwise overlooked. It's also super important that taking a look at their code of conduct gives you an opportunity to take a note of an event contact person that you can reach out to should an event happen, should an instance happen to you or somebody else at the event, and you'd like to step up and let one of the organizers know that action needs to be taken to protect the safety of people that are participating. Let's just talk real quick. Many of you have experiences, and many of you kind of reviewed this during your other lab sessions, but just a couple of quick reminders when you're attending an event, things to bring. It seems super obvious, but if the conference requires a ticket to enter, don't leave it in your hotel room. Also be sure to bring your identification. Some events require matching identification to your ticket in order to be able to enter. Also, if you like, we'll be sending out Tech Speaker t-shirts to everyone who's graduating this cohort. So bring your Tech Speaker hoodie or t-shirt with you. It's not required uniform for presenting at a conference or event, but many Tech Speakers choose to. The blue is an amazing color that helps you stand out in a crowd. It also works really well on stage, whether it's a dark blue background or even a black background. The color stands out, it pops, and it works very well on stage. Of course, as always, bring a backup of your deck and your notes. And bring yourself on time. You wouldn't want a 10-minute slowdown in traffic to ruin an entire trip to a conference. And of course, if you prefer to use a timer, bring one for yourself. A couple of tips for success that we'll just talk about real quick. Obviously, practice makes perfect. Always bring backups. Always arrive early to the venue. Always dress in speaker-friendly clothing. And if you need, bring a timer. We do our best to provide great educational content to our Mozilla tech speakers. We do this in two ways, through master classes and tech briefings. Many of you are already familiar with our master classes as you viewed several of those recordings during your lab sessions and while working on your lab exercises, but we also offer tech briefings. Mozilla tech briefings are short, typically under an hour, recorded presentations made by Mozilla staff. They do a short but detailed dive into a given technology. For example, we have a tech briefing on Rust. So it is a short deep dive into a given technology just to help keep tech speakers up to date about the latest goings on with a given topic. Now that you're a tech speaker, once we get everything set up in the system and you have full access to our content in Air Mozilla, you'll be able to check out the tech briefings, check out the master classes. There may be some master classes you haven't seen yet, and there will definitely be some tech briefings you haven't watched. So feel free to give those a browse and see if anything applies to you and would be helpful for the talks that you want to give. So now talk a little bit about after the event. Once you've completed, what do you need to think about and how do you need to proceed? This is our event feedback form. Forms are never the most fun part of any program. However, the event feedback form, which we call the EFF for short, it provides us with valuable feedback about your activity and the event that you just went to. In the form, we ask for 3 basic types of information. We ask about the event in general, we ask about the talk or presentation or workshop that you gave, and about the general buzz of the event. What did you hear? What excited you? What takeaway might be helpful to Mozilla? We compile this data here on the tech speakers team. We analyze it and we report it up through internal channels to our department management. Of course, your information is never shared externally. The event feedback forms are another thing that are super important to our program because it helps us get funding every year and it gives Mozilla the insights that are required into the industry, and it helps us decide where to spend our event budget for our developer events team, in fact. So we ask that these be completed within 14 days of the event's completion. Anytime you have an event that is funded directly by Mozilla, the event feedback form is absolutely required, and you will get pings from me hounding you about submitting that if it hasn't been done so on time. Anytime that you're traveling to your own event and Mozilla is not sponsoring you with money, supplies, or anything of that nature, we do strongly encourage the event feedback form, but it is not required. Again, though, the information is very helpful and valuable to Mozilla. It's only a few questions, and it's a super short form that we made as easy as possible for tech speakers to complete. So if you're willing to and you funded your own travel to the event, please do fill that out because we appreciate it and it's super helpful to our program. Another thing after your event, apart from the event feedback form, is invoices. Although Mozilla does pay for large items, big ticket items like flights and hotel are paid for by Agencia. Invoices are how smaller items like food and public transportation get paid back to you after your sponsored travel. So smaller expenses such as these are paid by tech speakers and reimbursed after the event. So you can choose, as a tech speaker, you can choose PayPal or even a standard bank wire transfer to receive your funds. The wire payments are distributed by Mozilla Accounting Department, and that's done every Tuesday and Thursday. PayPal is transferred on an ad hoc basis, and the typical turnaround time for those is between 3 and 5 days. Ideally, we like to try to keep you receiving your funds after submitting an invoice down below a 7-day window. We always try to do our best because it's important if you spend any of your personal money for traveling and evangelizing on behalf of Mozilla, we want to make sure that you get your reimbursement as quickly as possible so you have access to those funds again. If you need more information, I recommend you check out one of the links in the notes document. It's called the Tech Speaker Event Process. It details how to create an invoice step by step. It also contains a ton of other information, not only that is reviewed during this call today, but about the program in general. So the Tech Speaker Event Process document is a great guide to review for any tech speaker that's new. This right here is our standard invoice template that you'll use when submitting. There are a couple of example items added there, but when you start out with this, it should be blank, of course. The template cover sheet is required for all Mozilla Tech Speaker invoices. When you start this out, please don't edit the original. Go ahead and go to File, make a copy, and then you'll be able to edit that. Otherwise, every tech speaker would be deleting previous work. Also, another thing to keep in mind is that we want you to list each of your expenses on their own line item. Please do not combine things together. Please do not group all of your cabs in one line item, and also please don't group things like food in one line item. It's every receipt should have a line on the invoice. Simple enough. And also at the bottom of the information, you see that there is a place where you can select payment type, whether you indicated PayPal or bank wire transfer. It asks for the information that's necessary to make that payment. And of course, if you don't provide that, we'll bounce it back to you and just ask that you add it for us. As silly as it seems, let's review a couple of common invoice do's and invoice don'ts. Seems a little silly, but I think it will help to prevent a lot of the common mistakes that we see. Obviously, do save your receipts. Receipt image is required for any item that is being expensed. If an absolute emergency occurs, if your bag was destroyed in an explosion or fire or flood, we're understanding, reach out to us, let us know about what happened, and we'll do our best to work with you and work with accounting to get you reimbursed. There are other ways to substantiate purchases, such as credit card receipts in a worst case scenario. But original receipts are the standard, and they are required for your items on your invoice. Do make smart purchase decisions. I like to recommend that tech speakers behave the same as I would behave when I travel for work. If I'm at an event or conference and I'm out of town, I do not eat at 5-star restaurants. I do not stay in 5-star hotels. We also don't want you eating slop either. You do not have to go to McDonald's if you do not want to. So it's finding that balance between good, healthy food that is reasonable and affordable. We just ask that you make smart purchase decisions and spend Mozilla's money as though you were spending your own. Another do is to submit your invoices within 3 months of your event. It becomes very difficult, particularly for me, if you try to submit an invoice after the 3-month window that Mozilla typically recommends for reimbursement. It's still possible after that time period, but it becomes extra burdensome on me and the Mozilla staff members. So we ask that you please, please, please stay within that 3-month window. It helps to streamline the process for everyone involved. Also, do complete the invoice and receipts, do combine your invoice and receipts into one PDF. So when you submit an invoice to us via email, it will actually be one PDF document that contains the template as the cover page. And then below that will be the receipt images to match with the items listed on page 1. A couple of do nots. Do not round amounts and totals up. If you spent $68 on a cab, for instance, please do not round that up to 70. We want you to stay hydrated, buy snacks, buy food, but please do not buy food and drink for other people. If you're taking another person out to dinner, please let them know that you're not able to pay for them. Also, if you're using conversion rates, requesting a currency that is different from your home country, please do not use your own conversion rate. If you need to use a non-market conversion rate, perhaps your bank charges a different rate, you need to reach out to us, let us know, we can discuss that and explore the options. But without speaking with us first, do not make up your own conversion rate. And items, excuse me, and do not expense non-essential items. Things like souvenirs, cocktails, chocolates, things like that should not be expensed because they're not considered essential items. That covers our invoices. So if you have any questions about the invoicing, go ahead and add those over to the document now. I want to pause for a moment here, now that we've reviewed the majority of the material I wanted to cover today. I want to speak with you for a moment about the next steps that you can expect after this call. So after the Lab 6 sessions have been completed, here's what you can expect. We will be emailing you with an official acceptance letter to the Tech Speakers program, as well as a registration form. The registration form is needed to gather just a little bit of basic information about you so that we can add you to our roster. It tells us, your name, your email address, how to reach you on Telegram. We also ask about the topics that you're interested in speaking on, for instance, so that we're able to match speaking opportunities with speakers in the area. Also, we'll be sending out another form. It's a t-shirt request form. We'll be sending that out via email. This is so that we can get your shipping information and send you your very own Mozilla Tech Speakers t-shirt. It looks kind of like this. Once we get all the replies from that form, we actually will place our order for the specific sizes that we need and the counts and amounts. So there'll be just a little bit of time between completing that form for us to place the order, allow our supplier to do the production run, send them to us, and then we'll ship them out to tech speakers around the globe. So that t-shirt will be coming to you very shortly once our supplier is able to fulfill our order. Another thing that'll be happening after this call and in the coming week or two, we'll be completing your NDA agreement. Tech speakers are covered by a simple NDA agreement. It essentially allows us to share confidential tech briefings and other up-to-date information with you without having to worry about what we're saying, what we can't say. We want to be able to give you as much information as possible so that you're as up-to-date and on the cutting edge as Mozilla staff members, so that when you're out evangelizing and speaking on behalf of Mozilla, you have the knowledge that you need to speak appropriately and knowledgeably. Additionally, we'll be adding you to all the official Tech Speakers Telegram channels, and we'll be sending out a short onboarding survey as well to gather feedback on your experience. Great. So let's stop here and answer some questions if we can. Pull up our meeting notes doc. Give me just a moment. Hey, 22 people. Wonderful. Thanks everyone for joining. Okay, so let's start with some questions from our audience. Thanks everyone for adding these. Question number 1. I might have missed this, but can we recommend events in the calendar? So yes, you can send your recommendations to Michael, Flocky, or Jan Eves. It's already answered here in the doc. Or you can send it to tsstaff@mozilla.com. If you're somebody who would like to regularly add events to our CFP calendar, you can actually request to be given edit access to the calendar as well. So just reach out to us. We'll make sure that you understand the standard format that needs to be used to add it for tech speakers, and then we'll give you that edit access that'll enable you to add as many events as you want to the CFP calendar, provided that events are, of course, appropriate and in our wheelhouse and under our spectrum of the sort of events that we're looking for. So if you have one that you'd like to add or two that you'd like to add, I'd recommend reaching out to us directly and we'll do that for you. If you think you might like to add more than that, reach out to us and let us know that you'd like edit access and we can do that for you as well. Question number 2, what's a Telegram group for sharing events we get accepted? That's a great question. We have the Mozilla Tech Speakers as our main Telegram channel. And oftentimes that is the channel where people share news about recently accepted talks and proposals. So the main channel is the short answer. Will we be invited to the activities calendar? Or is there any public URL to register? Yes, you will be invited to the activities calendar. There's not a public URL that allows people to add events to that calendar because somebody could potentially throw rocks in our system. So yes, absolutely. The public URL is going to be view only. It won't give you edit access. So in order to be able to add your own activities to that, we'll be inviting you there. Will we share these slides today? Absolutely. I see number 5 is tips for invoices. I don't see a direct question there, but that is a great thing to go over. List them in chronological order. When your receipt images match the order of the line items, it is infinitely easier to review, verify, and approve. Every invoice goes through multiple levels of review, vetting, verification, and approval. It starts with Jan-Yves and myself, and then goes over to Mozilla Accounting or Mozilla Reps for an additional level of screening and verification. Unfortunately, in the past, we did have one instance where a person tried to submit receipts that were not authentic. It was immediately caught, and there was some strict action taken to correct this, and the person is no longer in the program. So don't do that. A tiny silly question is number 6, but a sticker with a t-shirt would be appreciated. Hey, that's actually a really good point, and I think we'll make a noted. Oh, number 7 is an excellent question. So when I introduce myself, whether it's on stage or giving a workshop, is it okay to talk about both my company and Mozilla Tech Speakers? Absolutely. There's some really good examples of this. One I might say recommend is one of our tech speakers, Anjana Vakil. She's a person who speaks and she's employed by a company. When she goes up on stage, she introduces herself. She says who she's employed. She also talks about the ways in which she engages with Mozilla. She identifies herself as a Mozilla tech speaker. So yes, absolutely. Identify yourself as an employee of the company. Also identify yourself as a Mozilla tech speaker. Is question number 8. The funding is only for conferences I apply to. If I get invited without applying, can I request funding too? So if the funding request is for any conference, workshop, or event that you've been invited to, it doesn't require that you first submitted a CFP. If a conference perhaps knows you by name and they reach out to you directly with an invitation, feel free to submit a funding request for that opportunity. The funding request is for all of your speaking and work. It's not dependent on a CFP. I hope that answers your question. Question number 9. How to share unconference activities since we don't know when and if we're going to speak there in advance? That is an excellent, excellent question. Unconferences are a little bit of a horse of a different color. So what I recommend for unconference, you have 2 options. You can add the activity to the tech speaker's calendar before the event. And if you go attend the event and you never end up speaking, then subsequently go back into the calendar and remove it. The other option for an unconference would be to add it after the fact. This is a little bit less preferred because we like to know who is traveling when and where they will be. It allows us to know it allows us to have our travel team on standby if you have any issues with your flight, your hotel, if you run into some sort of emergency, national disaster, or other event, it allows us to support you. So the best option is to add it to the calendar first, and if needed, delete it afterwards. For that same reason, unconferences, you are absolutely able to request funding for travel to an unconference for the opportunity to potentially speak. But that, whether or not an event is approved or if it's an unconference, is something we take into consideration when making our funding decisions. And I will say it is a little bit more difficult to get approval for an unconference than a conference that you've already been approved to speak at. So I think some of us are also Google Developer Experts. Is it a problem to promote Google Developer Experts brand? So I think this is absolutely a great question. I would pick a lane on this one. So it's absolutely okay to be a Google Developer Expert. It's absolutely go out to GDG events to speak and present yourself as a GDE. But depending on your talk, so if you're speaking about AMP, for instance, I would not present yourself as a Mozilla tech speaker because AMP is something that Mozilla does not believe very strongly in. However, if you're talking about something like WebVR, and it applies to GDE and it also applies to tech speakers, then absolutely, let people know. So where I think the trick here is asking yourself, what is the talk I'm giving? What is the workshop I'm giving? And what is the event I'm attending? Where it makes sense to identify yourself as a Mozilla tech speaker, absolutely, we want you to. We want you to be proud of that, and we want you to share it with people. But if there is not alignment between Mozilla and the topic, or if there's not alignment between Mozilla and the event, then perhaps forego that and then just present yourself as a GDE. I hope that was able to answer your question. If you have any clarification, feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to discuss with you in greater detail. Is there any summit for Mozilla tech speakers during the year? This is an absolutely excellent question. So we do not have what we call a summit, but the short answer to your question is yes. What you're asking is, do Mozilla tech speakers come together during the year? Absolutely. In the past, in 2016, most recently in 2018, we met in Paris. The way this typically works is we arrange this. In the past, we've typically arranged this once per year. We invite all tech speakers who have achieved a certain activity level. That activity level would be prorated. For instance, for any tech speaker that's joining in March, we do not expect that you've given, that you were active in January, February, and March because you've been busy with the onboarding program. So we, of course, prorate those expectations for new members. But we invite all new members who have achieved a certain activity level, given a certain number of talks or delivered a certain number of workshops, to come together. And what we do is a weekend of training. We share talks, we give each other feedback, notes. We also participate in workshops. We have professional speaker coaches that come and work either with the group or on one-on-one. They're absolutely amazing. They've been a lot of fun in the past. We really enjoy doing this, and we plan to do it again in 2019 for sure. In fact, Jan-Yves and I have been working very busy doing some planning for this year's activities in the background and behind the scenes. So stay tuned for more information. If you're interested in hearing about the meetups, we typically announce this sort of news, not only via email, but during our monthly calls. So if you want to stay up to date on what our plans are for our meetups in 2019 and beyond, always tune into those monthly calls. That is a great place to get the latest information on activities and fun things that we have on the horizon. Number 12, may I speak in any language other than English? Absolutely. For tech speakers training, and to participate in the program, we currently ask that people understand and are comfortable communicating in English. That's so that we can communicate with one another, so that Jan-Yves and I can reach out to you and we're able to converse on a level playing field. It's also so that you're able to go through our onboarding process that you've just went through. However, we have tech speakers speak many different languages. Currently, I think our tech speakers speak more than 50 languages, essentially, between our entire group. When you combine all the languages that tech speakers are fluent in, it's over 50. We have tech speakers that speak in Portuguese. We have tech speakers that speak in Italian. So the short answer to this is absolutely. If your event is primarily German or French, then by all means, speak German, speak French, speak Hindi, whatever is most appropriate for the event that you will be at. Great. Let's take just a quick pause and we'll see if we have any other questions that come in. Otherwise, let's see what anonymous alligators Yes, Anonymous Alligator has a question. Great. So Anonymous Alligators asks about activity levels and what is typically expected. Um, so we do not have a hard rule with how many activities a tech speaker has to give in a given year. We do try to aim for 4 talks over the course of the year. When we have training meetups that we do throughout the year, typically the threshold we've set it at is we do a floating 12-month average of your activity calendar. And we, in the past, have set that bar at 3 events throughout the year. Great. And those events can be workshop events, those can be speaking events, those can be leading a panel discussion, participating in a panel discussion, or giving live demos. So let us know there are multiple events that can apply. So if you have any questions about what would apply there, feel free to reach out to us and we'd be happy to clarify. And it looks like we have a new question coming in. Yes. Okay. So how long am I a tech speaker for? That's an excellent question. So you are a tech speaker from now until you decide to leave the program, essentially. That's provided that you stay engaged and that you stay active. We've had a few, I'd say, in the past, tech speakers who have kind of, they went through the training, they went through the onboarding, but for whatever reason, they never engaged with audiences or delivered talks at conferences. What we've done in the past is we're typically very understanding. People have busy lives, they have families, they have work obligations and things that change, emergencies that pop up. We've been very understanding, and so what we do is we try to be understanding. If you've gone a year without speaking, we do what's called a retention email, where we reach out to you, we say, hey, we've noticed that you've not been participating on the monthly calls or adding events to the calendar. Are you still interested in staying in the program? If you reply back to us and you say, you know what, I just started a new job, things have been absolutely crazy, we're moving to Germany, and my cat is sick. We understand that, and we're more than happy to give you a little bit of time for things to settle down in your lives. But if you do not reply to that email, or if you reply and say, you know what, it's not working for me, then what we do is we remove you from the program and we say, thank you very much, it's been an absolute pleasure, but then you're no longer considered an active Mozilla tech speaker. Great. I hope that answers your questions. How important is the topic of the talk in order to get funds for the event? So there are 2 ways to answer this question. I would say it is important, but there is a very wide umbrella. So topic of your talk is very important indeed. Again, maybe to use, if you wanted to give a talk that was in favor of if you wanted to give a talk that was against net neutrality, we would never fund that. Obviously, because it's not in alignment with Mozilla's technologies, principles, and values. We have probably, it's hard to count, 30 topics that tech speakers speak on. Everything from core technologies like Rust, JavaScript, things like dev tools, to even more obscure things such as blockchain, privacy, security, diversity, inclusion, open source communities. So we have a very wide umbrella of things that fall underneath the scope of aligning with Mozilla. So as long as your topic aligns with Mozilla's principles, with our values, and with the technologies that we're trying to promote, then we are more than happy to give funding if possible. With that said, if you are giving a talk that is slightly outside of that scope, and we have to choose between funding a talk that is about Rust and funding a talk that is about Bitcoin, we will choose to fund a talk about Rust as opposed to Bitcoin. So the further away you get from that scope, it becomes increasingly more difficult to get approval, especially if repeating requests for that month or for that week. Great. I hope I was able to answer question 15 for you. Let's take a look at question 16. Yes. So if I give the exact same talk at different conferences, does that count as multiple activities, or do they all need to be unique? Those absolutely count as different activities. We do recommend, I recommend, and the program recommends in general, that you do periodically update your talk. But it's common. You spend a lot of time and a lot of energy developing your slides, developing your talk, and you want to be able to leverage that effort at more than one event. That's very typical. It's very standard in the industry, and I encourage that. But we do also encourage that you periodically update that material just to keep it fresh, to keep it relevant and up to date. Can I give talks about competitor technologies? You can if you want, but don't call yourself a Mozilla Tech speaker when you do it. Great. We are at questions. Of course, we'll be available via email. We'll also be available via Telegram. So if you need to reach out to us on something that you forgot to ask or we were not able to cover in enough detail, then please do so. It also looks like we are right at the hour. So thank you, everyone. It's been a very busy hour. I know it's a lot of information. There are some very helpful links contained at the bottom of the notes document. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you for adding your name. Be sure to check out not only the Mozilla Community Participation Guidelines that are required reading for all tech speakers, but also be sure to check out the Tech Speaker Event Process Guide that's linked in the notes document. It contains all sorts of information about navigating Tech Speakers program, including a lot of what we spoke about today. So without further ado, I think we'll call the meeting. Thank you so much, everyone.